Good morning. This is the BLAINESWORLD podcast that can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also listen in on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and you can get more information and listen to previous shows on our website, which is kind of behind me, www.blainesworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. And each week we focus on news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce Naimah Coleman. Naimah, before we talk about your background, you can wave to all your fans and friends who are watching you. So you want to give them a wave? That is Naimah Coleman. And I don't know a lot about Naimah Coleman, except the fact that she burst onto the Asheville theater scene maybe about a month ago, a little bit before, in Pippin. And was that your very first role in the Asheville area?
No, not my very first role in Asheville, actually.
Okay.
I appeared, my first role in Asheville was in a local written play by Maria Young that was on the main stage called Transitions. And then I came back onto the stage for Elf last year, and we'll be reappearing in Elf this year.
Great.
And I was most recently seen before Pippin in Bright Star.
Oh, okay, that's right. I think that's the first time I had seen you in Bright Star, which I love. Yeah. But before we even talk about some of that stuff, Naimah, I don't know you, excepting for today, the first time we've met. Where did you grow up as a child?
So I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in a little town called Verona. And I spent most of my life. My family has been kind of in different parts of the country, so I've always moved back and forth between households growing up. So I kind of like had like a dual life, I guess, and got to experience two homes growing up as a child. And so most of my time was spent in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and as well as in Maryland, DC area. And then recently down here when my dad moved down here. And so that's how I became familiar with the Asheville area. And after graduating college, I knew that I wanted to come down here and experience the scene. It's always felt so lively, and like I knew that this was a good place where I could really get my performance and artist creativity and all of that, just like get more exposed to it and build my resume and everything. And Asheville is like a great place for
When you were growing
artists.
up, though, before you got to Asheville, though, when you were growing up in Pittsburgh, did you always know you wanted to be an actor?
Oh yeah, so growing up, my family has always like called me the drama queen of the family, or
I find that
just
hard
like
to believe. No.
I know, shocking, right?
Right.
Yeah, I've always been pretty dramatic growing up, but once I first grade was my very first chance of being on stage, and I actually got started with theater because I had always like put on different like at-home concerts with my little play sets and stuff like that. But I never really got on stage until first grade when my best friend, who is still my best friend at the time, she was already actively in theater, and she was like, you know what, I think you would really enjoy doing this show with me. And they were doing Wizard of Oz, and it was the high school that was doing Wizard of Oz, and rather than having high schoolers play Munchkins, they were like, why not just get some let's get some elementary students and have them play the Munchkins. So they were holding auditions, and my best friend was like, I can go audition with you, and it's gonna be fine, and you don't even have to know anything. Like, you can even just sing happy birthday and it'll be fine. And so I just was like, you know what? Why not? Let's do it. And I went up there and I sang Follow the Yellow Brick Road. And then I ended up getting a call back. In first grade, I ended up getting a call back for the Lullaby League. And so that was when I got that call back, it was like my first like rush of excitement and the anticipation that came of like, oh my goodness, like they they want to see more of me, and
It's
maybe
like,
this is it.
you sound like Sally Field. Remember when she won the Oscar or something? They love me, or whatever she
Yeah,
said, in that. Well,
yeah,
back to the first grade experience. So let's give a shout out. So your friend, she's still around? She's still your best friend?
yeah. Allison Burns.
Okay, so we give a shout out to Allison. And was she in the play also?
She was.
Okay. So here's an idea, Naimah, and you can speak to people about it, but I've shared it with Bob White at Asheville Community Theater and other places. I think we should do a fundraiser for a theater, you name the theater, where everybody recreates their very first role, so that one with you in first grade, did your dad or did anybody tape that anywhere, or they have a record of that?
I actually think I do have a recording of that somewhere. Yeah. Because I remember I actually have um because in elementary school and in school we had the rights to record our
Right.
performances. So um I have that whole play recorded somewhere as this little old school DVD.
I was
But
about to say, well, but just keep that in mind. I just think that'd be so much fun when everybody would recreate their very first role, so you get
that
a
would
chance.
be a lot of fun.
Yeah, think about that. Anyway, so go from first grade. So you made your debut then, and you got a call. I can't believe, like, first grade, you get a call back. So take your career from then. So then the acting bug got you, and you started acting like crazy then?
Yeah, after being on this, so in that first show, after being on the stage, I just remember like experiencing the feeling of like the lights on, or just being on stage. And I often get complimented on my stage presence and everything. And honestly, my stage presence just comes from me just enjoying, like fully enjoying being on the stage and sharing the stories with everyone in the audience. And when I'm on stage and performing, I am just a completely different person. I'm in my element, and I just remember how that made me feel, and I knew since then that I wanted to continue to do that. And so I obviously was in elementary school at the time, so there weren't any other shows that I could do until I got to high school. But I was actively in theater all throughout high school, and I took like a couple of acting classes, um, I sat in rather on a couple of acting classes. Actually, here in Asheville, once my dad moved down here at Screen Arts Co-op.
Right.
So it and so yeah, and that was enjoyable and fun for me as well. And then I decided that I wanted to go to college for music and theater. And so that's what I did, and I double majored in music and theater, which I'm both equally passionate about music just as much as I am with acting.
Where'd you go to
And
college? Where'd you go to college?
I went to college at University of Mount Union. It's in Alliance, Ohio.
Okay.
So a little small town, but yeah, I graduated with a BA in music and theater and a minor in psychology. And I had originally, and still do, have hopes to maybe check out the scene of music therapy. I was always interested in music therapy and working with kids. But I knew that after graduating, I wanted to get out there as far as performing stands, and wanted to get more exposed to different acting and performance aspects, because really I only ever got a taste of educational theater, and theater through school and different classes and stuff. And so I kind of wanted to, it's been a dream of mine that to be on Broadway, and I hope that one day I can fulfill that dream. But
well, before you then came to Asheville, what were some of the, either in high school or in college, what were some of your favorite roles?
One of my most favorite roles was playing Irma in Anything Goes.
Okay.
Um, I really enjoyed that musical and that role. She's a very comedic character, and I haven't really gotten the chance to play comedic characters throughout my life that often. So that was a fun experience for me. I also really enjoyed one of the shows that will always hold a place in my heart is Quilters, that I did in college as well, my freshman year, and that was my first collegiate show that I did. And Quilters as a musical is a small ensemble cast. So my character's name was Jane, but I actually played a bunch of different characters. So I can't really specifically say like which character I enjoyed, but that show in general was very special to me. And I also enjoyed playing. I am sad that Chicago is one of my dream musicals. I really enjoy everything that is Chicago, and I would have enjoyed any character. And I was casted as Matron Mama Morton, and unfortunately, COVID came
Oh, what
and
a shame.
we were unable to perform that.
Where
But I
was
was
that going?
really, really looking
Where was
forward.
that going to be?
That was at college as well, and
Okay.
so that was at Mountain Union, and I that was my junior year, and so I am very grieving that role and hoping that one day I will be able to play that role again,
Well,
and also other roles. Just do
point
that
of
show. And
information you may have heard, but Chicago has been done at ACT also. They did a great job with it. It's been done a
I
couple
have,
times in the area. But keep in mind something else you said, Naimah, and that's Quilters, which I'm not familiar with the show, but someday, bring it to the Asheville area because I don't think it's ever been done in the Asheville area. And as you probably know, they have so many theaters now in Asheville that there are opportunities for people to bring shows to it, even in Black Mountain. Have you been to that little theater there?
I haven't yet, but I've heard a lot of different things going on, and once my schedule lightens up a little bit, then I want to try to check it out. I do like keeping myself busy with lots of different um,
Let's talk about your
opportunities.
schedule because you're telling me you're off the air. I'm looking in your background. I don't see one thing is missing in that I don't see a pair of roller skates. Okay. And I mentioned roller skates because Naimah, I met a lot of busy people, but you're up there in terms of busy people that right, even as we speak, right now you finished one show, you're in another one, and you're rehearsing a third one at the same time. Have you ever done that
Yep,
before?
and I
Doing a bunch of
haven't.
Have you ever done that before, doing a bunch of shows at one time?
I have not. This is my very first time doing multiple shows at once, and it, believe it or not, it started off as so basically after Bright Star, that's when everything loaded up, and I had like this weird break, and I'm the kind of person that like I have to keep going, and especially with theater, like I've had too many moments, and I think I'm have felt this more after experiencing COVID, um, and the shutdowns with COVID, but not being able to do theater and actively be in theater is something that is very hard for me to do. And so I have tried to um, line up my schedule so that I am, I can still continue to do my everyday things, and I have my job and all the things that I have to take responsibility for and everything. But doing theater is what fills my cup up. And even though my schedule is chaotic and crazy, I enjoy doing it. And so it's something that I don't mind committing to. And so after Bright Star ended, I had a little bit of a break. And then I got uh, notified about a stage manager position for a 12th night at Montford Park, which I did and I accepted. And then it's like as soon as I accepted that position, all these shows started happening at once. And I was just like, I'm just gonna go for it. And I didn't know that I was gonna get in all of them. I didn't know. And so and I was also just very honest. Like I want to be really appreciative and uh yeah, I'm just thankful for all of the directors and cast members of the shows that I've been in, because it started off as five shows at once. Because I was in 12th night and I was working on a, a local written show by Monica McDaniels, the Riding Hood, Grimm's Tale Riding Hood, which that just ended earlier in September. And had been working on that. And then I auditioned for Pippin, and then I auditioned for Alice in Murderland, and I auditioned for Elf, and got accepted and everything into all of them. And I was upfront and honest with all of the directors and casting team and everything. And I said, this is my schedule. This is my show that I'm working on. I want to be in the show as well. I believe if we can work together, then we can make it happen.
Well,
And that's what
you're giving
happened.
you're giving some very good advice to folks who are listening to this, and I hope they're picking it up. And I picked up two things with your story. That one is that just what you said, that you shouldn't ever rule yourself out. Like you said, that as long as you're upfront with the directors, that you can do more than one show at a time. That if some directors are flexible, some are not, but you're a good example of it. If they want you, they can work around your schedule, I guess, a little bit. So, who would have thunk you could have done all these shows at once, but somehow you're managing, right?
Yeah, and that's exactly it. And I didn't think that I had no idea. Like I don't know the outcome of it. And I was like, you know what, the worst that could happen is that they say no, and then that they choose someone else, and it wasn't meant for me then.
Well, isn't that the same thing too, Naimah, with auditions? Some people will see a date. We're doing auditions on a certain date. And if they're in another show where they can't do it, they don't even think to call up or write or send an email. That if somebody wants, some directors will let you. I guess more and more they're doing video auditions. Are you seeing that more
Yeah,
frequently?
and I've done that before too.
Yeah, and they're doing video auditions, or they'll let you come in at a different date. But you have to, as you say, just ask. The other thing I'd like you to just talk about, and it's a really good point you made, is the fact that there are so many good actors in Nashville, and I'm saying that in a very positive way. And so that you can't get, even though you're on a roll, kid, you can't get every role you apply for, but there are so many other roles in theater that need people, And so even talk a little bit about some of the shows you were stage managing, that for everybody you see on stage, you see probably twice as many off stage. Would you say that's true?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The magic wouldn't happen without the people off stage.
Had you ever been a stage manager before?
I have, but only with like, it definitely was a different experience for me stage managing 12th night, because prior to then I was only a stage manager for youth productions or in an educational setting. And so, or something like small, like a talent show or summer camp.
Right.
And so it's a little different. And so stage managing a legit show with adults is a different process, and it takes I tip my hat to all of the stage managers because it's a lot of work.
Well,
I did it. I'm proud of myself. But
I was going to say, for the benefit of the folks who don't know what a stage manager is, they see the term all the time. They see the director, but explain, if you can, in an hour or less, what a stage manager. No, not an hour or less, but just what does a stage manager do, Naimah?
the stage manager is very like it's kind of speaking of Pippin, like the ringleader really of everyone. Like, yes, the director is the top dog, but the stage manager whips everyone into shape. And so they communicate both with the director, the production team, and cast members, and like that's your go-to like safe person if like for some reason things or concerns or communication needs are arising within the cast, and like it's something that the cast members don't feel comfortable with speaking to the director about, or vice versa. Stage manager is the person to go to. And also, the stage manager helps keep everything on track and keep, the organization of the show within the show and outside of the show as well during rehearsals, keep making sure that everyone gets breaks and that everyone is happy and healthy.
Well,
So
also,
I guess
yeah, no, I was going to say, also, isn't it true with the stage manager? A lot of times, the director's not even there. So the stage manager, right? Once the show opens, the director doesn't have to be there automatically, but that's when the stage manager takes over.
yeah, once the show opens, you have some directors that enjoy the show so much and they like to be there every night, and some directors that are like, all right, it's your show.
Well, also give a shout out to stage manager. You've certainly worked with some good ones, and in particular, Pippin, your stage manager was,
And
and
Garen, I love Aunt Garen so much.
me too. And if so, if you're listening, Ann, or we'll make sure you hear that. But you are the best, and so you were fortunate to work with Ann. But let's go back just to the shows I'm familiar with that I've seen. I've had the pleasure of seeing you in. Now go back to Bright Star. Refresh my memory. What was your role in Bright Star?
I was Florence, so I was Margot's little one of Margot's close friends in the bookstore,
Oh, okay, now I
and
remember. Right.
we had a little trio, yeah, and
Wait,
we sang.
yeah. Oh, now I remember. It was you and who was the other guy within the bookstore, right?
Yeah, so in the bookstore, it was me. Out of the friends of the characters, it's Saf, or Safia, who was Margot, and Ellie, who was Edna, who also has the role of in this upcoming.
And we may be having a little technical difficulties here, so if we see we can get beyond that. But the other thing where I so admired your work in Bright Star and the work of everybody in that show is that I was so impressed that the whole crew were so into the show. Like even though you said you didn't have the leading role, you were so visible in it and so animated into it and so into it. And it's fun watching you, and that will give a shout out. Are you frozen right now a little bit? Okay, hold on one second. Welcome back to Blaine's World, the podcast. And you may have missed us a little bit, but we're having some technical difficulties. But thanks to Naimah Coleman's expertise, we're back on stage. So Naimah, welcome back again.
Thank you.
And you and I were talking about the show Bright Star. So that's, I think, where I first had the pleasure of seeing you. And the amazing thing about that, I was saying that aside from the great work that Anne Garrett did as stage manager, one of the things I have to give you credit for is the fact that you were so involved in the play, even though you didn't have a leading role. And I just give credit, if you want to mention, we'll give a shout out to the director, but there was such a big cast, and every one of it felt like they were on stage all the time. That was pretty impressive, isn't it?
Yeah. And Mark Jones, so that is a very typical thing with a Mark Jones production. um, Mark is very good about making sure that every actor is seen on stage, no matter the size of their role. And to Mark, it's not a Mark Jones production if every single actor and cast member is moving their own set piece and doing a lot of the crew work. So, or what is typically known as the crew work. So, that also played a big part in that. But it honestly was, it's something that I have enjoyed being a part of his productions. And I always like getting to, play the best of both worlds. And, I get to perform and everything and move my set pieces. Like, that's fun too.
And it was so amazing. It was such a large cast. And as you said, everybody, I could see everybody, in specific parts, and you were just so good in that. Like I said, not in a leading role, but you were noticeable, and not in a bad way. It's not like you were stealing every scene. But let's then fast forward a little bit to the fact that that show ended, then you went to Pippin, and this was I guess first leading role I saw you in Asheville. And how'd that feel, the Pippin, that experience?
It's still, it honestly is very hard to, it's like a dream. I, knowing, back when, from my very first role in first grade, after experiencing the rush that I've felt from being on stage, and I really very much feed off of the audience a lot too. And so when there's really great audiences, or when the audience is invested with me, then it does amplify, as it does with any actor. But I feel I connect very closely to that, and it amplifies my performance. And I remember, first off, just like in general, like Pippin was an amazing show and is an amazing show. And I had never gotten the chance to see the original Pippin or video recordings of professional Pippin. I've seen a high school cast do it, and I fell in love with the show ever since then. And I, after the revival, listened to the cast recordings and fell in love with Patina Miller's voice. And I just knew that was like an inspiration. And leading player in that kind of role has always been a goal of mine. I've always been one of my I have many, but one of my favorite musicals is Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. And I've always been fascinated with the narrator role. And that, to me, leading player reminds me a lot of that role. And so just like having that in the back of my mind and always wanting to play that role, just like, and I remember auditioning, and I felt really good about it, and I didn't know if I was going to get the part. And I know it's nerve-wracking. Auditioning it within itself is nerve-wracking, but I've auditioned multiple times now at in Asheville, and there are a lot of crazy talented people, and it's hard to stay focused and stay, and having the background that I do have, where like, you know, it's different for me because this was my first lead role, and so I had never had an experience of, you know, getting the nerves off my back because I've had other lead roles in the past, whereas a lot of my comrades have had lead roles or supporting leads growing up in school. But this is by far 24 years in my 24 years of life, the biggest role that I've had. And I remember getting the call from and I just felt amazing after auditions in general. And I remember after the callback, I was very pleased with my performance, and I saw things in me that I didn't know were there. and and then I got the call from Bob White, and he told me that he wanted to offer me the role of leading player, and I just about almost cried.
Did you audition for that particular role?
I did.
Okay. Because again, you know, I just can't see anybody else in that role than you. But what I loved about it, and explain just how you do this, but we were lucky we had first row seats in that particular show, and it felt like but I think everybody in the theater felt that way. But it felt like you were communicating directly with us. You know, it was such a beautiful thing to experience. And how do you do that? I think with all the stuff you do, how do you get it so that you communicate with everybody in the theater, not just the people in the front row?
I think that that's where like being an empath is kind of helpful. But also I've experienced, like, I'm not just a performer, I've also experienced being in the audience, and I know what it feels like to be an audience member, and what I want to see and what I want to feel, and wanting to, and I think about like, what do I want to give to the audience? What do I want to share with the audience? And you know, and also trying to tell the story that the director and the creative team wants to tell, what the writer wants to tell, and everything. And I combine all of that, and it's really, one key thing that I appreciate as an audience member is whenever I am connected to the when I'm fully intimate and connected with the cast. And I remember through lots of classes and stuff, like I've learned or have been taught different tactics here and there, and how to draw in your audience and everything. But one thing that I remember hearing a lot of is like, if and whenever I've given like dramatic monologues or have sung ballads or anything, you know, you don't want to lose eye contact, or sometimes you want to find that space in the middle that's like, you don't want too much eye contact, and because you do sometimes too much eye contact can be scary or uncomfortable, but you do want to just enough eye contact or interaction with the audience that they feel pulled in. And it's like, and it's more of like also breaking down that fourth wall and allowing them to be a part of the show as well. And so I think about that a lot when I am performing, and I just I don't want the audience to just be watching a show, but I want them to feel like they are a part of the show. And so no matter what my role is, and with Pippin it was a very good show for that
player.
but but no matter what my role is, I try to draw the audience in that way.
Do you have preference in terms of roles? Do you have preference, drama or musical?
Um, for me, it's musical because it's the best. It's the best of all the worlds, not both worlds, because I strongly, if you couldn't tell, I enjoy singing and I enjoy dancing as well. And so the trifecta, I love the whole trifecta, and I love a dancing musical, because I love doing all three, and all three of those things bring me joy. Although I also really enjoy drama and straight plays, because the emotional aspect of it, or intimacy, I enjoy, because sometimes with different musicals you can get lost in the spectacle of it all, and so it is really nice to experience straight plays, and um, and that I enjoy doing those because um I'm still telling him a story with musicals, um, but I feel like musicals versus straight plays, you're telling the story in a different way, and I do enjoy very emotional and like sensitive. I like to get deep.
So
basically.
talk about getting deep. So after Pippin, then you had this tremendous vacation or break period. You go and talk a little bit about that process. So as you're still on Pippin, you're also involved in what, 2 other shows simultaneously?
Yes, right. For now.
Until a third
Um,
comes along. Yeah.
yeah, because I'm still auditioning. Um, but so yeah, right now I actually am about to I'm actively in rehearsals for Elf, which is coming back to ACT main stage in December, and which if you're listening and you want to see Elf and you missed it last year, get your tickets now,
That
because
I couldn't believe it. I never saw anything like that. Like you said, that it was like 2 weeks before I wanted to get a ticket,
it
sold
was,
out.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So and they're already, we're only like halfway sold out right now, and it's not even it's not even November. So yeah, and we've been there's talk. I don't want to, but there may be some performances added. So that's how popular Elf has been.
Now you
Um,
roll you for the benefit of the people who don't know it, you roll in Elf is what?
Oh yes. So last year my role in Elf was Charlotte Dennon, New York one. Um, but so this year I will be playing Deb, who is Walter's secretary, and I'm super excited to be playing that role, and look forward to it. And then I also am about to start running my performances in Alice in Murderland as the Red Queen. That role was actually dual casted, because going back to being honest with my um, team members and directors, I auditioned for Alice at the same time auditioning for Pippin, and Alice in Merlin was a little bit before Pippin, and I went to my audition and I said, I'm going to be honest, I'm auditioning for Pippin. I really want to be in this musical. If they offer me a role, I will accept it, but I also really want to be in Alice in Murderland. So if you're willing to work with me, I can do both. And that's what happened. And so they figured it out. And because Alice opened on the last weekend of Pippin. So that was the conflict there. And so they were able to dual cast the role of the Red Queen, who is being played um, as of yesterday was the last day, by Rania Nielsen. Um, and I will be taking over the role for the rest of the run, starting this weekend on the 20th.
And if you can, if I can ask you, just talk a little bit about where that show is and how to find out about that. So that's playing where?
Yeah, so that is at Montfort, at the Hazel Robinson Amphitheater, and or Montfort Park, Montfort Park Players, and so Alice in Murderland is actually another local written show. So I just keep getting into all these local written shows, by Will Storrs, who is also playing the Cheshire Cat in the show right now. Yes, Will Storrs is the writer and Cheshire, and it's directed by Deanna, and Caitlin is our stage manager, and it has been and Deanna is also fight choreographer, which is important because the Alice in Murderland has a lot of fight choreography in it.
I think anything you'll see at Montfort, you're going to see a good deal of fight choreography.
Oh yeah, and it's all good. It's really exciting.
Well, let me ask you that for that particular show, and we'll have to talk about Elf as well. Elf obviously is kid appropriate. Who should be seeing the Alice show? What
definite? I would. It's dependent on the family. Right now, we're saying I believe that it's PG, or it's rated R. It's rated. They said rated R for language and violence. Personally, I think that they're like 13 and up can handle it, depending on if what family and household preferences are against or towards violence and profanity. There's a lot of profanity and and there's a lot of violence, but the violence is obviously staged, so it's perfect for Halloween. It's if you've seen lots of horror films, then I feel like you can definitely come and see Alice in Murderland. So
one of the benefits of folks seeing in that show, it definitely is the best deal in town because stuff at Montfort Park Players, people can make contribution if they want, but it's free. Can you imagine? Yeah. Every seat's a great seat, outdoors. It's quite an experience, and that's pretty exciting. So that's going to take you now. So we're in that show through the end of, I guess, October, and then Elf starts about when? Do you remember?
December 1st.
December 1st. So you're just a little bit busy, I'd say, from now until the conclusion of Elf. Let me ask you this: in terms of after, do you have anything on the books? Or have anything planned?
Yes.
That you can share.
It just keeps going.
Yeah.
I actually so I will be Stephanie Hickling Beckham.
Oh, sure.
Is doing a I believe, might want to correct me, but I got offered a role in a play that she's directing. I can't entirely remember if it is an original, but that is supposed to be up and running in around January, February. So I have a little bit of time. I also plan to and look forward to auditioning for Matilda at ACT, and fingers crossed, hopefully, maybe you'll see me on stage there. But
now, Stephanie's production, is that going to be a Different Strokes production?
I've gotten that question and I'm not entirely sure, because I know that that Stephanie is with Different Strokes. I'm not entirely sure if that's going to be a Different Strokes production or somewhere else, but more to come once it all I got was, would you want to do this? And I said yes.
Well, and to work with Stephanie, I think you're going to see is quite an experience. I'm so glad you're going to be doing that. She's fantastic. Well, let me ask you this: how do you handle or juggle doing? I've been in a couple plays. I'd have like one line, and that's a lot for me. But how do you juggle doing 2 or 3 plays at once and then working on others at the same time. Is that difficult for you?
A little bit. I have ADHD, so
Okay.
that's that's part of it. But it it can be difficult for sure. Um I definitely um I've, I've I've created kind of like a routine and yeah, some tactics that work for me. And so what's helpful right now is that most of the shows that I have been in are kind of like cascading. And so it's becoming less and less as time passes. So I have the ability to, like, when I was in Pippin, my main focus was Pippin. Yes, I was working on lines and learning fight choreo for Alice in Murderland. And I also was in, that was during Pippin rehearsals, I was in Riding Hood. We hadn't started Elf yet. So it was just Riding Hood and Alice that were the conflicts during Pippin. And, but my main focus, so since the performances of Riding Hood were before like tech week of, so I went from like three different tech weeks back to back basically because I had the last weekend or the performance week, tech week of Riding Hood was technically the first tech week of Pippin, but it was the week before Pippin's production week. So I had Riding Hood. So obviously Riding Hood was prioritized in early stages of Pippin. And so I make a lot of note cards, and somehow I memorize things very easily. So I don't know how. I can't explain it. It just happens. And so I get my note cards, and then once it's in my body and once I do it, then it's a part of me. And so I got to that point with Riding Hood, and I didn't need my note cards anymore. And so then I could start focusing more on Pippin. And once I finished Riding Hood, then okay, I can throw Riding Hood away for now and just focus on Pippin. Pippin's in the front, and then Riding Hood, or not Riding Hood, Alice in Murderland is second. And so I had tech week for Pippin, and that was just Pippin, Pippin, Pippin. And then I I get done with tech week, and then once you get through the tech week, especially, then that's when like the weekdays start to get a little lighter. And so I would tell my different production teams that, like, okay, I need to make sure that I'm dedicated to this show for this tech week. And then after that, we won't have, once the show is up and running, you don't have rehearsals during the week. So I have more free time. And so I just would make sure that each show's tech week, I was dedicated to that show and only that show. And once I got in the routine of doing that and staying driven on that one show, then it's in my body. And like I said, I memorize things easily once. And so, and then Murderland comes, and after Pippin opens, Murderland had tech week, and here we are now. And I am getting a pickup rehearsal this week, since it's been a while since tech week for Murderland, and I want to make sure that things are feeling good. But it's really a collaborative effort. But a lot of, I guess, my groove is, having that main focus on each show at a time, and then just trying to get memorized and off book on that for that show as soon as possible, so that as things lighten up, then I can focus on the next show.
Two final questions. Have you ever done a show and then gotten to revisit it 5 years later or 10 years later, like in college? Have you ever done a show where you did it a second time elsewhere? Have you done that yet?
I have not done that yet.
Yeah, because
Yeah, I haven't done that. I had to think about it for a second. I haven't done that yet.
I'm thinking out loud. That would really be fun then when you get to revisit that first grade play. See if you remember the lines, from when you were in first grade. But the other question is, moving forward, if you can share, do you have any dream roles that you'd like to play in the future?
Yeah, one of my, I really, really would love to, I guess not necessarily dream roles because there's a lot of roles specifically, but dream shows where I would just about enjoy any role. Or I would love to do waitress.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would love to be Jenna or Dawn or anyone. And um but I would love to be, if speaking of just a role, then Jenna, I would love to be Jenna and waitress. And which I actually auditioned for Bright Star with a waitress song.
Oh, really? Okay.
And, yeah. And I also would really love to be somewhere, I would love to do The Color Purple. And I would love to do Little Women and the musical. And I would love to be Jo. Yeah, and I mean there's other roles that like I probably couldn't do anymore because I'm I'm not young anymore. Or I say that like I know I'm young, but I'm not like a child.
Well, no. I'm saying back to your elementary school. I meant to ask you. So you never got to do Annie?
No, so we did Annie. Actually, they did Annie right before I auditioned for Wizard of Oz. So
Okay.
I was not a part of Annie, but they did do, growing up in school, they did do Annie. But that's what my best friend was a part of, and that's why she was like, "You got to do this. This was so much fun." So yeah, but I would love to do, yeah, things like Annie, and even Matilda.
Yeah.
I would love, if I were young enough to be a kid, I would love to be a kid in Matilda. And
Wait,
I think of
who's doing Matilda?
um that is going to be directed by Zoe Zalanki
Okay,
and
great.
Michael Yoritzo,
Okay.
and the co-directing. So yeah, I'm looking for it. I have not, well, I love Zoe so much. and I would love to be I would love to work with her as a director. And I also love Michael, and I haven't gotten to work with him yet because he usually does a lot of the kids, the youth productions. So I'm hoping that yeah, I can, that will be something that I can do. I
And
would
they
actually would love the role of Miss Honey, as someone who is a teacher and who strongly, I I have a deep passion for my kids and working with kids and everything.
and Naimah Coleman, in terms of keeping in touch with you, best thing people can do is see any of the shows you've been in. But is there any other way they can follow you? Facebook, LinkedIn, any place they can find out what you're up to?
Yeah. I am mostly active on Facebook and Instagram. So my Facebook is my first name and my last name, and you will see there's there's two versions of me. You don't want the really, really old high school version of me, but the most recent one is right now there's a picture of me as leading player from Pippin, but I'm
Okay,
actually
great.
will be changing it to my Red Queen picture. And then my you can probably put this somewhere because I can say my Instagram, but it's kind of a lot, but it's like underscore period finding period Nemo.
Well, do me a
Period.
favor. When I post it, put that in one of the comments. So I'll let you do the honors. Anyway, I'd like to thank you, Naimah Coleman, for being my guest on this edition of Blaine's World podcast. And thank you for honoring me by being the first podcast you've ever done. So I appreciate that. I'd also like to thank my producer, Cappy Tassetti. I look forward to seeing you on stage and then, of course, screen down the road or all these other places. But just a real pleasure to watch you. So thanks for all the great work you do. Naimah, good speaking to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.